Hello, welcome to episode 4 of Late Night Useless Thoughts with Joe. My day was pretty smooth going today. The weather was nice. I ended up sleeping in, but I was productive. I studied a bit, I went to tutor, and at the end of the day, I was happy with how I spent my time. But here I am, up at 2 a.m., not being able to sleep, and my body's tired despite sleeping in. I usually have no problem sleeping after sleeping in, but today is not one of those cases. And I just wanted to delve into this idea of rumination, which is what I'm experiencing right now, I think. So rumination is just a fancy word for getting stuck in a loop of repetitive thoughts. It can be about problems or worries, but then the caveat is that you don't actually try to solve anything. So I feel stuck at the moment in life, as I've said before, and during the day it feels like normal overthinking, but at night it feels more serious, more sinister. It's like my brain has 50 tabs open and they're all auto-playing stressful videos, and I can't even find the mouse. And I usually think about my future a lot. I worry about it a lot. I look for jobs and I end up feeling miserable about not being able to find a job in the end. I did have a job, but it didn't go well. And I feel drained. My mind is busy, but I'm physically drained. And people often refer to this as wired and tired, when your body is desperate for rest, but your brain is on a completely different page. And the worries that pop up are very random and feel way bigger than they actually are. Like a minor task for tomorrow could suddenly feel like climbing Mount Everest. And any past mistakes I made feel like it just happened a minute ago. And thinking about these things, sadly, is not being productive. I feel like a hamster stuck on a wheel of worry that just creates more stress. And for anyone who's been through this, the cycle is brutal. You worry because you can't sleep, and you can't sleep because you're worrying. And every minute feels like a personal attack. Everything you think about just feels off, and everything you think about feels like you're doing something wrong. And in the end, you even start worrying about not sleeping, and you do the math on how many hours are left until your alarm goes off, and it makes things even worse. And in the end, I at least beg my brain to shut up, but it doesn't work. It just doesn't. It's always full of thoughts, and I'm constantly filled with anxiety for the future. Maybe not anxiety, a lot of worries for the future. And these little thoughts feel like they're happening to me. So one thought about a work project could spiral into fear of losing a job, which could spiral into anxiety about finances. And then in 3 a.m, I am planning for an apocalypse. It's just not in my head, it's also a physical thing. Like my heart might start beating a little faster, and my body feels tighter. I'm lying perfectly, but my body feels like it's getting ready for a fight. So why does it do that? And I actually read a little bit about this, so that was a little introduction. And so apparently, why the brain decides to throw a worry party is because of brain biology and sudden quietness where people panic in it. So the key player is the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So the prefrontal cortex is right on your forehead, and it's basically the king or CEO of the brain. It's a logical region. It deals with logic and rationale, and it basically tells us that, hey, it's not a big deal. We'll figure it out tomorrow. And it helps us manage our emotions and keep things in perspective. And then there's the amygdala. This is your brain's twitchy alarm system. It also manages your memories, I think. I'm not too sure, don't quote me on that. But it's always scanning for something. And when it spots a threat, it triggers your fight or flight response. During the day, your prefrontal cortex is basically the boss of the show, and it keeps amygdala in line. But then once you worry about something, the prefrontal cortex basically says, hey, we got this, we have a plan, we'll be fine. But then when you get more tired, your prefrontal cortex starts to check out. And this is when the rational voice gets quieter, apparently. This means the night shift security guard, the amygdala, has way more power, and without the calm logic, the amygdala treats every tiny issue like a major crisis, which is why I feel like every little thing that won't go right in my life is a huge, huge crisis, and I have an existential crisis over it. So a small worry I would have at 2 p.m. would feel like the end of the world at 2 a.m. because the part of the brain that provides context is basically half asleep. And this brings us to the second problem, which is our sympathetic nervous system. So it's basically your gas pedal, our body's gas pedal. So this thing gets activated when amygdala senses danger. Your body listens and basically pumps out stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And this is when your heart rate goes up and you become hyper alert, which is basically the opposite of what you would want when you sleep. Because sleep requires parasympathetic nervous system, your body's brake pedal, and it's often called a rest and digest system. So the nighttime worry loop is basically a biological tug of war between the gas and the brake, which is the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And the brain is just slamming its foot on the gas, basically. And cortisol, the stress hormone, normally it's the highest in the morning and hits the lowest around midnight. But when you're chronically stressed, the whole rhythm just gets messed up, and it causes cortisol levels to stay high at night. So it's like drinking a shot of espresso at night, and you just can't seem to sleep. And this is the most interesting part that I find, but it's because it's quiet. Yeah, during the day, you're always distracted by your phone, meetings, errands, and these things act like a little dam holding your worries back. But at night, you take all that away and you just lay there in the dark. Room is quiet, and then the dam holding back your worries just breaks, and all the thoughts you push down during the day come rushing in. And because your prefrontal cortex is off duty, your brain just turns inward and starts inventing worst case scenarios. And it's not like your brain is out to get you, right? It's our brain after all. It's just our brain's doing bad job, or not bad job, doing the wrong job at the wrong time. And that's basically the science behind it, which I thought was very interesting. I pretty sure I learned this in psychology class, especially about sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. But I don't remember much about how it affects sleep, so I thought it was worth sharing. And the real power, I think, is knowing how to fix it. So I've also read about this today, and I was like, maybe I should use this. But apparently there are two ways that you could tackle this and try to get rid of it, I guess. It's just that having zero thoughts is impossible, but you might be able to lower it, and changing the relationship with your thoughts can create perfect condition for us to flip the switch and just be like, hey, you're going to sleep. So one of the most powerful tricks apparently is to give your worries their own appointment. So one that doesn't happen in your bed. It's called a brain dump. And studies show that just writing down your to-do list or worries before bed can help you fall asleep faster because you're getting the thoughts out of your head. It's basically like telling your brain, I wrote it down, you can chill now. And here's how to do it. So about an hour or two before bed, you take 15 minutes. You don't do it right before you turn out the lights because it can wake you up. So you grab a notebook. First, you make a quick to-do list for tomorrow, get it all out, send the important email, buy milk, and this shows your brain that it won't be forgotten. And on another page, do the brain dump, which is write down every single other thing on your mind, fears, frustrations, random thoughts, and just let it pour out. And when you're done, close the notebook and put it away. So I've done this about 1 or 2 hours ago. It feels a lot like free writing in creative writing. Free writing is where you just write out your thought directly on paper. And it was a very interesting experience. I would write down stuff like, I'm worried about the future. I don't know what I'm doing. What else? Let me check. I have some silly things like, I think my hairstyle looks bad. I feel fat. But you get the idea. There's a lot of little worries that don't really matter. I mean, it does matter to me, but in the end, it's not really anything, right? Our worries are not the end of the world. And the second technique is basically breathing. And I think a lot of yogas do this. I'm not really a big fan of this technique because I don't have the patience for it. But apparently slow deep breathing just stimulates your rest and digest system. And just doing a simple exhale, laying in bed, putting one hand on your chest, and breathing in through your nose, and then breathing out slowly for a count of 6 or so. So you basically breathe in shorter and you breathe out longer. And that pretty much helps. So I'm not a big fan of that because I feel like it evokes some kind of like weird thoughts. Not thoughts, weird feeling. I used to meditate because my mom is a huge Buddhist fan, and not a fan, she is a religious Buddhist, and I would have to meditate with her, and it was such a boring process. You just think about breathing, that it distracts you from everything, but at the same time you're thinking about breathing, so it's not really a pleasant experience. So those are the main two techniques, but then there's other ways to really tackle it or think about. So one of them is just giving your brain a active distraction. So it's not about fighting those thoughts, but then pointing your attention to something that's pretty boring. And it's called articulatory suppression. It sounds super technical, but it's actually really simple. You basically silent or repeat a single boring word like the or any, like dog, and you just repeat it nice and slow. And it's actually hard to build a sentence when you're constantly repeating a word in your head. And another one is that is similar to this line is cognitive shuffling. So it basically scrambles your thoughts on purpose, like random images that float through your head right before you sleep. So for example, you can pick a word like garden, and for each letter, you start thinking a word for it. So for G, you can think grape, glass, I don't know, gold. But you don't have to try hard. The goal is just to be random. When you run out of ideas, then you move to A, I don't know, air, argon, ass, sorry, then R, and so on until you reach the end of the word. And the process is just naturally random that short circuits your brain to tell a stressful story. And this seems a little tacky, but anxiety really tends to focus on negative aspects of life. And a great way to fight is to shift your focus to something positive. And actually, research shows that a simple gratitude practice can lower worry and help you better sleep. And as part of your wind down, you could maybe take 5 minutes and think of 3 specific things you were grateful for today. They don't have to be huge. Like, it can be the sunrise you saw this morning, a nice chat with a friend, how comfy your bed feels. And focusing on good things on purpose makes you actively work against your brain's instinct to look for danger. So it's not really ignoring your problems. It's just you're balancing the scales and shifting your mind from a state of threat to a state of peace, which is obviously way better for falling asleep. So these are some things I read about, but obviously if your anxiety is severe, then that's obviously out of my control. And anyway, that's what I had for you guys today. So just to wrap it up, right? Our nightly fight with our brain isn't a sign that we're weak. It's just there's a very solid biological background. My mom always scolded me for being weak and being mellow. But you know, I can tell her all about this if she listens. But but there is a strong biological backing to this. And now that I know that writing down my worry kind of makes me feel better in a way, I guess I can try doing that for about a month and see how I feel. And yeah, maybe if you're interested, maybe you can pick one of the things I've mentioned and try for yourself. For me, it's the brain dump, but some people might be inclined to breathing, or they might be more about thinking about random things. But I think being consistent is way important than being perfect, you know? Consistency is the key to success, like a lot of people say. And maybe consistency will get us somewhere. Anyway, that is all for today. Thank you for joining me. And I don't think a lot of you are watching this, but if you did make it till the end, let me know in the comments. I included music yesterday, but if you like video without music, then that's also some suggestions that you could make. Anyway, thank you for spending time with me, and good night.